It finally happened. Public charging reaches £1 per kilowatt hour. Is this the end of electric motoring? It's tough out there at the moment, no matter what type of energy you're trying to use, but using an EV for long distances just got a whole lot tougher. Osprey Charging just announced that they are increasing the rates for their rapid charging network to £1 per kilowatt hour. The reaction to this has been fairly predictable. To some extent, I understand why. Let's take a look at what this means for some typical EVs using some stats from EV Database. There's a link in the description. It's a really useful source of facts and figures around range and efficiency. They're just averages, but they should provide a good benchmark. A Tesla Model 3 uses 245 watt-hours per mile on average. That's 4.1 miles per kilowatt hour for those that use sensible units, giving you a cost of 24 pence per mile. A Hyundai Kona comes at 253 watt-hours per mile, 4 miles per kilowatt hour, so straight up 25 pence per mile. Let's compare that to some typical internal combustion engine models, shall we? We'll take miles per gallon figures from Fuelly, a crowdsourced record of fuel efficiency from real drivers. As always, it's no exact science, but the EV Database figures aren't either. At the time of filming, a litre of unleaded is an average of 166.7 and a litre of diesel 182.3 according to RAC Fuel Watch. There's a link to that in the description as well. A diesel BMW 320d I think is a fair comparison to the Tesla Model 3, especially given its popularity with the company car crowd. A 2018 320d has an average of 44.8 miles per gallon according to Fuelly, which I think is actually fairly representative. I spent a year with a 2018 320d and that was about right for its fuel economy. This would represent a fuel cost of 18 pence per mile at the moment. A Hyundai Kona with a petrol engine I think is a fair comparison to an electric one, and surprisingly Fuelly shows an average of 33.3 miles per gallon for those. I think that might actually be a bit on the low side, but we'll go with it. 22.7 pence is your cost per mile for a petrol Hyundai Kona on that basis. And what better to compare the e-tron 55 to than the Audi Q7? It's not an exact match, but it's certainly not far away. 27 miles per gallon seems to be the average for a diesel, again seemingly on the low side, but we'll go with it for consistency, and you'll be paying 30 pence per mile in one of those. Now I know more efficient vehicles are available and more optimistic miles per gallon figures are also available, but let's try and stay fairly realistic with the comparison. You're still 30% more expensive in a Model 3 than a 320d, 10% more in a petrol Kona than an electric one, and 27% more in an e-tron than a diesel Q7. That is absolutely shocking. Osprey aren't the bad guys here though. The level of hate I'm seeing directed at them is ridiculous and so misguided. I think there's a common misconception that businesses are able to buy energy for a really low cost, and some people think they even pay less than residential, and that just simply isn't true. Even basic small business electricity supplies are hovering around the 80 to 90 pence mark for new deals. Rapid charging sites need guaranteed capacity and you pay even more for that. Factor in the huge capital costs for the equipment and the operational costs of maintaining and running the network, and it's no wonder that prices are reaching these levels. Here's the statement from Osprey's CEO Ian Johnston on the situation they are facing. There's a link in the description if you want to see the whole video yourself.
Hello, I'm Ian Johnston, the CEO of the Osprey Charging Network. Today, Osprey have announced a price increase across our charging network to £1 per kilowatt hour. The circumstances around this change are so extraordinary that I wanted to personally explain what's happening and why we've had to do this. The current sky-high energy prices are well documented, and there are news headlines every day about the impacts of the energy crisis. The government have announced a £150 billion support scheme for homes and for businesses. However, as yet, we have no details on this scheme, and indeed no timeline on when we'll have those details. Unlike residential customers, to date there has been no cap on the price that businesses pay for their electricity. And indeed, in recent weeks, the price of electricity has risen to more than 3 times what it was this time last year. This doesn't just affect EV charging networks, but also local shops, cafes, pubs and factories across the UK. And therefore, I'm sure I won't be the first CEO of an independent business that's placed in this difficult position. Until we know more about the government support scheme, we have no choice but to increase our pricing. Of course, we want to reduce these prices if we are able to do so. Thank you for listening to this short message. We understand how hard things are for customers right now, and we look forward to giving you more positive pricing news in the year to come.
This is a much bigger problem than just one charging network deciding they want to ramp their prices up. With the current situation regarding wholesale energy prices, it is becoming untenable for many businesses to continue operating at these levels. Urgent action is needed from the government in order to stabilise the market and improve trading conditions. I do like that it includes a promise to lower prices again should their costs start to reflect that. I think this is the first time I've actually heard a network say they're going to do this. It's easy to compare the pricing to other networks and say that Osprey are price gouging, but remember, they have all steadily increased their prices over the last year. I would be amazed if the majority are not experiencing exactly the same price pressures as Osprey and that they're on the cusp of making a very similar announcement. This has been the case every time rapid charging prices have increased over the past couple of years. The one exception is the pod point rapids found at supermarkets like Tesco and Lidl. They remain very low at 28 pence, which is around the current domestic price cap. Well below what I think their cost price probably is. It's really easy to look at that and question the morals of a £1 rate, but remember that these are heavily subsidised by the supermarkets to drive custom. Supermarkets are also very well hedged in the energy markets because they have the usage rates across their estates that allow it. This is currently difficult for the charging operators because they just don't have the utilisation rates that mean they're using enough power to be able to have such a strong position in the market. The power consumption of the typical supermarket chain absolutely dwarfs any of the big rapid charging providers by a long, long way. You might decide you'll seek out these pod point chargers exclusively to save money, and I can totally understand the desire to lower running costs, I get that. But given they're pretty much all single rapid sites in supermarket car parks, you'll probably be queuing to use them quite a while, and that doesn't sound like fun to me. Of course, home charging mitigates these costs massively. Whether you're paying the predicted 52 pence from the price cap that's been sort of put on hold now, the 34 pence it's going to be now that the government have stepped in, the 28 pence it is at the moment, or you're paying 7.5 pence on Octopus Go, your costs are massively lower than any of these rapid charging costs. Those who can't home charge are going to struggle massively during this period. And if prices don't come back down, I think EV adoption is going to be significantly hampered by this. What do you think? Will you now sell your EV and go back to diesel? Do you charge at home so often that it's of little relevance? I'm sure there's a lot of opinions out there. The one thing that's crystal clear though is you need to direct your anger towards those that can actually make a difference. Those in government, whether it be pushing on for a VAT reduction for public charging, increasing support levels for businesses, recognising that we are facing an absolute nightmare for the adoption of EVs for higher mileage drivers, and doing something specifically targeted at charging providers. Something needs to happen to make things more tenable. The charge point operators have their hands tied at the end of the day. You cannot expect them to go on selling tenors for a fiver, and I think it's completely unreasonable for anybody to do that. It's not the most profitable business anyway, despite what you might think. I mean, go and have a look at Instavolt's accounts. They probably give you the best example of how it really isn't anywhere near as profitable as people think it is. The capital costs are huge, the running costs are huge, and the utilisation and turnover isn't actually that high. Even at these new increased rates, these companies are going to struggle to survive. And I think claiming that they're profiteering, they're price gouging, all the rest of it, just simply isn't true. I think you need to look at the bigger picture here. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.